Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast, working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
Someone helped me as a youngster to be where I am today. I've never forgotten it. When you get it, you give it back, and you must do something good for someone every day. That's how I went my life.
He was the Illinois Secretary of State for 24 years. He played professional baseball with the Chicago Cubs organization. He was a paratrooper for the 101st Airborne, a member of the Illinois House, and perhaps most famously, formed the Jesse White Tumbling team, performing for the NBA, the NFL, professional baseball, and in front of presidents and thousands of people throughout Chicago and beyond. He's Jesse White, and he's David Hirsch's guest on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello now to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers, Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network. Please support the 21st Century Dads Foundation by contributing to Dads on a Ride 2023, which is a 3,100-mile, 7-day bicycle ride taking place from June 17th to the 24th, starting in Oceanside, California, and ending in Annapolis, Maryland. I'm one of the 4 riders and would really appreciate your support. Please make a tax-deductible contribution by going to 21stcenturydads.org.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org. And now let's listen to this fascinating conversation between David Hirsch and Jesse White.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Jesse White of Chicago, Illinois, who's recently retired Illinois Secretary of State, who served in that capacity for 24 years and under 5 governors. Prior to serving as the Secretary of State, he was the Cook County Recorder of Deeds for 7 years and a member of the Illinois House of Representatives for 16 years. Prior to his 5 decades-long political career, he served as a paratrooper in the U.S. Army and was a member of the 101st Airborne Division, as well as Illinois National Guard. He was also a public school teacher with Chicago Public Schools, as well as an administrator for 33 years, and he played minor league baseball for the Chicago Cubs after his time in the service. Most impressively, from my perspective, starting in 1959, he founded the Jesse White Tumblers teams, which provided more than 19,000 at-risk youth, girls and boys, with training and guidance to make positive choices and learn important lessons in life. Jesse, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
Thank you. Glad to be on board.
You're the proud father of 3 children and 2 grandchildren. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
I was born in a town called Alton, Illinois, which is across the river from St. Louis. At age 7, we moved to Chicago, here on the north side, the Airborne Division, where I attended Schiller Elementary School and later went back to teach, and then on to Lincoln Park High School, which at the time was Waller High School. And then from there to Alabama State University in Montgomery, Alabama, where I played basketball, baseball, and taught gymnastics, and I attended church, Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, which was under the leadership of Dr. Martin Luther King. And of course, a lady by the name of Rosa Parks was arrested, and he was asked to lead the effort to desegregate the Montgomery transit system. He said he would do so, but he would use a nonviolent means approach in order to bring that about. He used to give me $20 after every basketball game. They gave me credit for bringing the jump shot to the South. They had never seen a jump shot before. And I was an all-city basketball and baseball player in Chicago, and then went off to Alabama State on a scholarship. So I played basketball, baseball, and taught gymnastics, and that was my scholarship. But people there had never seen a jump shot before, and so they marveled at the fact that I was able to shoot out near half court, jumping off the floor about 3.5 feet, maybe 4 feet high. As I said before, Dr. King had to attend this church because I was a pledgee for the Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. And Ralph Abernathy, the civil rights leader, required the pledgees to attend his church. He was fresh from Atlanta, Georgia. He was fresh from getting married. He married a young lady by the name of Corella Scott King. And she, I guess, encouraged him to settle in Alabama. He was from Georgia. And at this church, this one morning, Sunday morning, we were required to attend, and we had probably about 35 people in the church. And we ran back to the campus singing the praises of Dr. King. And so the next Sunday, there may have been about 100 people in the church. And each Sunday, his church would increase in population. And later on, he was promoted to the next Avenue Baptist Church, where he indicated that he had been asked by the city fathers to lead the effort to desegregate the Montgomery transit system, and he had agreed to do so, but he was going to use the nonviolent means in order to bring that about. So he says if you get struck on one cheek, you turn like Gandhi and you get struck on the other cheek. And so I raised my hand. He said, Jesse White, what can I do for you? I said, Dr. King, you know me well. You know I'm from Chicago, and we don't operate like that. He said, well, just follow the script, and if you do that, victory will be on our side, and all is well. I said, well, thank you very much, Doc. And then after I graduated from college, I came back to Chicago, went out to Wrigley Field, tried out with the Chicago Cubs. And as it turned out, there were about 300 ball players. They only took 5, and I was one of the 5. And 4 days before going to spring training, I ended up going to basic training at Fort Leonard, Missouri. And while I was there, I decided I wanted to learn how to jump out of airplanes. And so I went to jump school, earned my wings, and did 35 jumps in total. Came back to Chicago, put my uniform in my closet, got my ball bag and glove, and flew off to Mesa, Arizona to be with the Chicago Cub organization. I played D-ball, C, A, AA, and AAA. Never made it to the majors, and there's a story behind that, and we'll get to that later. But the bottom line is this: after I came back to Chicago, my godfather, a fellow by the name of George Dunn, who's a former and longest serving president of the Cook County Board, asked me if I would consider running for state representative. I said, Mr. President, I enjoy knocking on doors, circulating petitions, and getting the word out about the candidates who've been endorsed by a party. I said, well, I don't think I would do very well being an elected official. He said, you'll do fine. And so I said, every weekend I would go skiing up in Schuss Mountain, Minnesota, Michigan. And I would go down this one hill, and I just could not negotiate it. So on this particular Sunday, I went down 12 times without falling. I said, when I came back, if I could handle this hill, I could handle a political arena. So I told President Dunn that he had his candidate for state representative. I asked him, he said, great. I said, what is the boundary lines of the district? He said, well, Fullerton to the Chicago River, and then from Lake Michigan to the North Branch of the Chicago River. I said, what is the racial makeup? He said, oh, just 85% white, 10% black, 5% others. I said, Mr. President, that's like 2 strikes against me and a curveball coming up. He said, you do fine. So as it turned out, I ran and I served Lincoln Park. And then I asked him another question. What is the makeup of the district in terms of communities? He says, well, Lincoln Park, DePaul, River North, Streeterville, Gold Coast area, Magnificent Mile, Ranch Triangle, and Cabrini Green. I said, that's like going from Gold Coast to the Soul Coast. So he said, you'll do fine. So as it turned out, I ran and I served this diverse district in a manner which they could be proud for a period of 16 years. And then later on, the party asked me to run for Cook County Recorder of Deeds to replace Cal Mosley Brown. And so I served there for 16 years. And then I became the ward committeeman of the 27th Ward. And 12 of my precinct captains indicated they wanted to meet with me. And I said, well, what can I do for you, gentlemen? He said, well, we've been thinking, and we've been talking among ourselves, and we thought that maybe you should seriously think about running for Secretary of State. I said, well, no African American had ever been successful in running for Secretary of State for the state of Illinois. And so I said, what makes you think that I have the qualifications to do that? He said, well, we think that you have all that it takes in order to one of the largest Secretary of State offices in the nation and in the state of Illinois. I said, well, what is your pleasure? He said, well, we think that you should meet with Speaker Madigan and speak with him and ask him to support you in this effort. So I called him. I said, Mike, this is Jesse. He said, yeah, nice to talk with you. I served 16 years in the General Assembly with him, so I knew him well. And his seat was only a few feet from where I sat. And so I asked him if I could meet with him. He said, well, sure, come down to my office. How about 1 o'clock on Monday? I said, well, sure. So I said, Mr. Speaker, do I create a problem in my desire to run for Secretary of State? He said, yes, you do. I said, well, can you explain that to me, sir? He says, well, all of the people who are running for the constitutional offices are from Cook County. And we need someone outside of Cook County in order to be able to gain control of the House, retain control of the House, and gain control of the Senate. Just wouldn't make sense for us to have all of the candidates, constitutional officers coming from Cook County. I said, who do you have in mind? He said, well, Penny Severance. I know the senator from Decatur. He said, or Glenn Bouchard. Oh, yeah, from Southern Illinois, congressman. He said, there's a fellow by the name of Tim McCarthy. I said, well, who's Tim McCarthy? He said, he's a fellow who, Secret Service agent, took a bullet for President Reagan. I don't know him. I don't trust him. I think he's a Republican. I said, okay, thank you very much, sir. So I left his office. I went back to my organization and indicated to them that I did not get any encouragement from Speaker Madigan. So they said, we're going to circulate your petitions anyway. I said, you guys go right ahead and do what you have to do whatever you want to do. I'm enjoying being the Cook County Recorder of Good Deeds. So
Good deeds.
So about a month later, they called me and said, we'd like to meet with you. I said, okay, fine. So I met with these 12 precinct captains. They had 9 stacks of petitions, 3 stacks for Penny Severance. They said, well, Penny Severance circulated petitions, but they were round table. They had 12 people to sign her petitions. In the middle of yours, all of yours are good. But we want you to see this other stack. I said, why do you want me to see those stacks? He said, well, it's interesting that you would, I want you to see who circulated the petitions. Well, I looked at Airborne, Tom Hines, Congressman Lipinski, and Mike Madigan. And it was for Tim McCarthy, and Tim McCarthy is a Republican, and he is from Orland Park, which means that he was not from outside of Cook County. So I was still upset by that. So I called Mike back and asked him to allow me to be with him again. And he said, what can I do for you, Jess? I said, Mr. Speaker, I said, I served with you in the Illinois General Assembly for 16 years, and you never had to worry about where I was when it came to your agenda. I said, but the other day when I met with you, you told me that you didn't want anyone from Cook County to be considered for Secretary of State because you wanted to be able to retain control of the House and gain control of the Senate. And you said that all the candidates being from Cook County, that was a non-starter. So I'm here because I'm really seeking a reason as to why you were so disingenuous with me regard to this matter. He says, well, I believe that Tim McCarthy will bring more to the table than you. I believe that he will help me to retain control of the House and for us to gain control of the Senate. So if I were you, Jesse White, I would tell your friends, your colleagues, your supporters, not to waste their time, their efforts, or their energy on your behalf because Tim McCarthy's going to become the next Secretary of State for the state of Illinois. Do you understand? I said, Mr. Speaker, I came to this meeting to seek a reason as to why I shouldn't run. You've given me a reason as to why I'm going to run. You have a good day, sir. So I went back to my organization and I said that I'm in it to win it. So I averaged 14 to 16 events every day, traveling all over the state of Illinois. Go to bed at 2 o'clock every night, getting up at 6 o'clock every morning. I was a former military person, a former athlete, so I have that competitive spirit.
Very disciplined, yeah.
And so, as it turned out, on election day, I won by 150,000 votes. And so the next morning, first person I saw was Mike Bannister, who came to congratulate me and to give me some financial support. And so we've been friends ever since. We were friends before, and now we're back friends again.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. It speaks volumes about your sort of integrity, right? You know, you're just honest, you're straightforward, you're opening up the lines of communication. Like you said, you're in it to win it, right? And I think that's just exemplary. You know, it speaks volumes about the way you conduct yourself, not just then, but, you know,
well,
consistently.
I believe if you take on a job, you should take on the responsibility that goes with it. And you have to be at your duty station every day to discharge your duties to the best of your ability. If you do less than that, shame on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that ties right into being fathers, being present physically, emotionally, spiritually, you know, in your children's lives.
Well, someone helped me as a youngster to be where I am today. I've never forgotten it. When you get it, you give it back, and you must do something good for someone every day. That's how I run my life. And with the Jesse White Tumblers, they have to be leafless, smokeless, and pipeless, and no marijuana or cannabis. Maintain at least a C average in school. They must learn to love their fellow man and woman, or better yet, not dislike anyone because of race, creed, and color. I've been there, done that, I know that. I know how badly it makes you feel. I know how deeply it cuts. I have zero tolerance for that kind of nonsense. And then, of course, we want our young people to go out into life, to be a positive force. And that's why we insist upon them maintain at least a C average in school. If they drop out of school, then that's a non-starter. Mm-hmm. You are a persona non grata. He said, what does that mean, Mr. White? Get out of here. So I believe in tough love, but I do believe that every day you should spend time helping our young people to go tall and straight and to give them the tools that are necessary for them to become a success in life.
Yep, we're on the same page. So I want to go back a little bit. When you were growing up, I think you had mentioned previously that you have 6 siblings and you're the middle child. So what was it like growing up in a big family like that?
We lived in a town called Alton, Illinois, and the washroom was outside, or the toilet was outside in a little shed called an outhouse. And then later on, at age 7, my family moved to Chicago, to the north side, the Airborne division, which was a predominantly Italian neighborhood, where you had to be able to capisce Italiano, you had to be with the Calamari sauce, and you know, if you could speak someone else's language, eat the food, and dance, learn about the culture, makes for a good relationship. And so I worked in a grocery store for my neighbor Samuel. I played a lot of basketball, softball, and ran track. And then later on, I went on to Lincoln Park High School, which is Waller High School. Then it's Lincoln Park now. The first year, I didn't do anything. I didn't play anything. The next year, I was encouraged to play basketball, try out for the basketball team. And then I was encouraged to try out for the drum corps. So I was a member of the drum corps, in the band and orchestra, and played basketball and baseball. And ended up being an all-city athlete. And after I had completed my 4 years at that wonderful institution of learning, I was ready to go into Beloit College, but I didn't have a sequence in math. They turned me down. Then Ripon College wanted me, they turned me down. Northwestern turned me down. And then Tennessee State turned me down. They said, well, you're too short, you're only 5'8½". But Alabama State in Montgomery, Alabama was encouraged by a fellow by the name of Othel Anthony, who was a good friend of mine who graduated from DuSable High School, told the coach that we have a fellow in Chicago by the name of Jesse White looking for an institution of higher learning to attend, and you will benefit tremendously by having him on the team. And so they invited me down. I tried out. They gave me a scholarship. I spent 4 years at a wonderful institution of learning, playing basketball, playing baseball, and teaching gymnastics.
I love it.
That was my scholarship.
Yeah, well, it's like when one door closes, perhaps another door opens, and it sounds like you had a lot of closed doors for whatever reason. Maybe it was your height or whatever.
Well, we have to talk about my baseball. I got to tell you about that door too.
Yeah. Well, back to your family. I'm sort of curious to know, what did your dad do for a living?
My father worked for the Chicago Pottery, where they made sinks and face bowls, etc. He also worked for the American aircraft industry, putting parts in planes. And then later on, he opened his own business, a janitorial service. And he passed away. That was what he was doing. And we would come out some days and would help him to clean up some of the offices that was under his contract.
Excellent. So I'm sort of curious now, how would you describe your relationship with your dad?
Wonderful. Wonderful. I love my father. And we've never had a cross word, never would do anything to disappoint him. He used to spend most of his time bragging about me to his colleagues. He spent a lot of time in Logan Square. That's where most of his offices were when he opened up his janitorial services. And he was bragging about my son Jesse, who was with the Cub organization, or that scored 60 points in a high school game, and what I was doing in college, and the list goes on and on. And
I'm assuming he was bragging about your siblings too. He wasn't just bragging about you.
Well, he was because I was in the newspaper a lot, and people on the radio were talking about me and my ability to shoot the basketball and how fast I was. So they could relate to what he was talking about because they could see it in print or hear
Gotcha.
it through the media. But he was proud of all of his kids. And as I indicated before, when I entered the military, I signed a contract playing baseball for the Cubs. 4 days later, I was drafted into the Army. And so they sent me to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and while I was there, I decided I'm going to jump out of perfect good airplanes, went through jump school, did 35 jumps, came back to Chicago, put my uniform in the closet, got my ball bag and glove, and flew off to Mesa, Arizona for spring training. And they assigned me to Carlsbad, New Mexico, D-ball, and I worked my way up all the way up to D-ball to AAA. As it turned out, I played for AAA, I played for Salt Lake City, and I hit a home run this one night. I very seldom hit a home run. So one of the reporters said, "I'd like to know if I could have an interview with you, Jesse White." I said, "Well, what is that about?" She says, "Well, I heard you do a lot of wonderful things in Chicago with kids, and I'd like for you to, I want to capture that information if I can." I said, "What is your place?" She said, "Well, can I have lunch with you tomorrow at this particular restaurant?" I said, "Well, sure." So I met with her at the restaurant, and while I was sitting there with the microphone before us, between us, two of my ball player friends saw me. And one was from South Carolina, one was from North Carolina, and they were hunching each other, and they were really peeping, trying to hear the conversation, and was really concerned about me being with this white woman. Then a few moments later, Fred Martin, the pitching coach for the Cubs, saw me, and he stood there with his hands on his hips. And so that evening, getting ready to play the game, he called me into his office and told me that you were on the list to be brought up by the Cubs, but your name has been scratched off. I said, what happened? He said, "Well, you're out out with your girlfriend." I said, "That young lady was not my girl, but she was a reporter from the Deseret News, and she was doing a report on me, doing a story about me, about what I do back in Chicago." But no. Tell that story to someone else. Well, as it turned out, I was never brought up. So later on, I quit. And so the Cubs were owned by the Wrigley Spearman Cum at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Ricketts bought the Cubs a few years ago. He heard the story. So he decided that he wanted to have what is called Jesse White Day at Wrigley Field. So he wanted the Tumblers to come out to perform. He wanted me to throw a pitch out, and he gave me a contract. And so it was like, "I'll show you." And so 2 thumbs up for Tom Ricketts.
Yeah, well, I understood that story to be that you signed a one-day contract,
Yes.
and you're an honorary member of the Cubs organization for life now.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that story. And not to make too much of it, but was that a blatant issue of discrimination because you were a black man back in the early 60s in an organization that was mostly white baseball players?
Well, let me share one more story with you. A fellow by the name of Paul Casanova. Paul was a Cuban, about the color of my shoes, from Cuba, and he and I were the only two ball players on the team. And in those days, black ball players had to live with black families. We could not live in the same hotel with the rest of the ball players. We could not eat in the same restaurant that the other ball players ate in. So this one morning, we were in San Antonio, Texas, and I said, Paul, let's have breakfast. So we went to this restaurant. We sat for about 15 minutes, no menu, no water, no service. So finally I said to the young man, how about some service here? He said, well, we don't serve colored people here. I said, Paul, I spoke in Spanish, no service, vámonos, levántate, stand up, let's go. So he hit the table and swore. And so as we were walking out the door, I'm talking, I'm thinking he's behind me. He's sitting down at the table. And I was beside myself. Here this fella, so I went back and I grabbed a seat to sit down. And the fellow said, no, you gotta leave. We'll serve him, but they won't serve me. Now this guy was the color of my shoes, Cuban, couldn't speak any English, not a citizen. I'm from a military person, a citizen, and I spoke English very well. I was beside myself because of that kind of discrimination. Well, I experienced a lot of that in my lifetime, and I'll tell you a story one day about my big experience with segregation and discrimination when I was up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. But the bottom line is this: I have zero tolerance for that kind of hatred or dislike for anyone. And I teach my young people, you cannot ever be a part of that arena. Violation of all laws of human decency, and you become what is called persona non grata with me, you're out of here.
Yeah, well, thank you for emphasizing that. And, here it is, 2023, and the stain of discrimination, of racism still exists in our society. It's shocking. It's appalling.
Shouldn't be as ugly.
Yeah, it's unspeakable. But getting back to your dad, when you think of your dad, is there a lesson or two that come to mind that, have helped you guide your life and conduct yourself in the way you do because of your dad?
My father and I were like brothers. I mean, we had that kind of a relationship. I would go to his ball games. He played softball. And I would marvel at his ability to play and meet some of his teammates and some of his colleagues and friends. And my buttons on my shirt would pop off because I was so proud of him. Not only the way he played ball, but the way he conducted himself with us, the way he taught us, the way he spoke to us, always in a highly professional manner. And I said to myself, I want to emulate this man.
That's fabulous. So I'm thinking about other father influencers, and I'm wondering what, if any, influence your grandfathers played, first on your dad's side and then on your mom's side.
My mother's father was a preacher, and he was a dapper guy. He dressed well, he spoke well, he was well liked and highly respected, and he was always there to help us with whatever the problem we had. He was there to give us advice and counsel, and there were times when we needed a few dollar bills. He was there for that purpose as well.
How about your dad's dad?
I never met him.
He died at an early age.
See, my mother and father met each other in Alton, Illinois. My father was from Carruthersville, Missouri. My mother was from Earl, Arkansas. And they met in Alton, Illinois. Okay. And then she had 3 children. And then he married her, and then she had the 4th all the way up to 7.
Okay. So you're the 4th.
I'm the 4th.
You were the firstborn between the 2 of them.
That's right.
So you're your dad's first child, really?
That's right.
Okay. So that's a little bit of the specialness. But between you and
Well,
him, maybe?
he was fair to all of us. He was just a great guy.
Okay. Any other father figures, men who played an influential role as you were growing up, or maybe as a young adult for that matter?
Well, Alonzo Krem, who was an assistant principal and also a PE person, helped me as a youngster coming up. Fred Ross, he is deceased. He too helped me when he worked at the Lower North Center. And then my basketball coach, Russ Chappell, Englishman, toughest guy I think I've ever met in life, helped me to hone my skills in basketball. Then, of course, George Dunn, my Irish godfather. And then I used to work for by the name of Sam Aiello at a grocery store in Vision in Cambridge. And he'd say to me, and he'd call me Bucky, he'd say, Bucky, I want you to open the light in about 10 minutes. I want you to close the light. And I figured that one out. He says, turn it on, and then 10 minutes later, turn it off. But wonderful man.
It sounds like you've had some really important role models in your life.
That's why I'm involved with what I do. Someone helped me along the path. It's only fitting and proper for you to give back and do something good for someone every day. If I don't do that, I'm going to have a bad day.
We'll be back with more of the conversation on the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast in just a few moments. But first, this quick message. Please help 21st century dads gather research on families raising children with special needs by having them complete the Special Fathers Network Early Intervention Parents Survey. A link to the survey can be found in the show notes. As a token of our appreciation, each person, mom or dad, who completes the survey will receive a Great Dad coin. Thank you. Now, back to the conversation.
So let's talk a little bit about your different experiences. You've talked a little bit about your baseball career. We talked a little bit about your service in the House of Representatives, which led to you being elected as the 37th Illinois Secretary of State and then serving in that capacity for 24 years, the longest serving Secretary of State in Illinois, and one of the largest, if not the largest, DMVs in the country with 4,000 employees.
It is the largest of its kind in the nation.
Okay. So when you look back at your 24 years as Secretary of State, I'm wondering, what are the highlights? What achievements come to mind that you can reflect back on that said, we did something that made a difference?
When I came to this office was under a cloud of controversy. George Ryan was the Secretary of State, and he left with the office being under a cloud of controversy, where the employees were required to buy fundraising tickets, sell fundraising tickets, and do political work and contribute to his campaign. And so I decided that when I came on board that I had to do something about it. I hired an Inspector General, Jim Burns, to help me to come up with some ways by which we could bring this office up to snuff. And so we abolished the process by which individuals were required to buy fundraising tickets, sell fundraising tickets, do political work, or sell driver's licenses or stickers or state IDs. So this was the order of the day when I walked into the office, and shortly thereafter, it was a part of history. George had a person who was his best friend to serve as his Inspector General, who was not qualified to serve in that capacity. So after I hired Jim Burns, I went before the Senate to ask them to make sure that whoever the Inspector General is for the Secretary of State's office had to be confirmed by the Senate. So now you're getting the real bang for the buck.
Yeah, well, you want that to be like an arm's length transaction, somebody who's objective.
It's someone who's qualified, and it's someone that have a degree, the Inspector General. Never heard of such a thing.
So just as a point of clarification, didn't George Ryan go from being the Secretary of State to the governor?
Yes, he did. But then later on, he was convicted for some of the things that happened in the Secretary of State's office. He's a good friend of mine, good guy, and I have a good strong respect for him, even though he did something that was not proper. But he was a good man. I served in General Assembly with him too as well, and he was the Speaker of the House when I was there too.
Yeah. So any other aspects of the Secretary of State experience that come to mind?
Well, the orientation donor program, my sister Doris wasn't feeling well, was in dire need of a kidney. There was not a match within the family, so she put her name on the orientation donor list, and through the generosity of someone, a gentleman who happened to be Caucasian, passed away, and she received his kidney. She lived an additional 28 years as a result of that gift. We honored a teacher in New Lenox, Illinois. She gave her student her kidney. We honored a doctor at Loyola Medical Center. She gave her kidney to a patient. And then I hired a gentleman who received 4 organs. And then I hired another gentleman who received 5 organs.
Oh my.
And they, it's a walking billboard.
Yeah, that's impressive. You reminded me of a personal experience that I had. I was so inspired by your program, the organ donor program, that I contacted somebody in your office. I couldn't tell you who it was or the exact year, but I had this idea that we were going to get T-shirts that said "Got Organs?" ? Right? And like the Got Milk campaign. And I thought, oh, this would be perfect, right? It'd be so easy just to, use that popular way of communicating.
I like that.
And they said, that's an interesting idea, but that's not going to work for us. Thank you very much.
Whether you told me,
I didn't talk to the right person.
That's right.
But, as a result of that, I've become an organ donor. I've been outspoken about, people, you can't take the stuff with you.
Sure.
Right?
Let me share something else with you, too. When I walked into the office, only 18-year-olds could become a part of the orientation donor program. And as it turned out, I introduced a bill in the Illinois General Assembly to have it changed to allow 16 and 17-year-olds, when they get the driver's license, to be able to become a part of the orientation donor program. And as a result of that move, I think we have somewhere in the vicinity of about 200,000 young people who are now part of the orientation donor program. Now, we cannot use our organs on the 16 and 17-year-olds. They have to get parental consent. But they can participate once they reach the age of 18 on their own.
Yeah, well, I think one of your MOs is you want to get to these young people as early as you can, whether it's organ donor, Jesse White Tumbler.
And I also want to be able to put good people out into the world. Mm-hmm. And I want them to know that, and I've experienced discrimination and segregation for a long period of time. It really hurts my soul to think about how another individual could treat me or anyone else the way that I was treated. And so I teach these young people zero tolerance when it comes to racial discrimination. Bullying is another problem too, where they do electronic bullying. They do it by way of a cell phone, and they do it in person. And so, zero tolerance with that kind of nonsense. Now, can I be a part of anything I'm involved with if you feel that way about your fellow man or woman?
Yeah, well, what I hear you saying, I guess pun intended, it's a black and white issue, right? It's just right or wrong.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So let's talk about the Jesse White Tumblers team. What's the backstory? What was it in 1959 that got you off the couch and said, I need to do something?
Okay. During the off season, I taught school during the day, worked for the Park District at night, was asked to go on the gym show at the Rockwell Garden Fieldhouse, which is the Rockwell Garden Housing Project at Adams and Western. A fellow by the name of Warren Taylor was the park supervisor, so he asked me to put on the gym show. I said, okay, great. Well, I taught the kids forward roll, back roll, cartwheel, round out, flip flop, They brought out the springboard and taught them how to do somersaults off the springboard, because these are some of the same things that I taught when I was at Alabama State University. So as it turned out, from that one gym show over to Paris, the gym was packed. We had never seen that many people in a gymnasium in life. And so the parents said that they'd like for me to continue on with the program. And I said, okay, fine, I'll go one more year. Well, I started out with 1 year, ended up with 65 as we speak. And it's to the point now where it's a household program. It's a household name, Jesse White Tumbling Team.
Oh, yeah.
Where the people know that the kids are going to be well educated, well mannered, and be put in a posture by which they can help run this country of ours. So we have strict rules and regulations. You violate the code of conduct, then you're out of here. And so over 19,000 kids, 16 that I know of have got themselves in trouble with the law. It's been married to combat juvenile delinquency. And as I said before, kids say, hey man, I'd rather be in trouble with the police than be in trouble with Mr. White. That's how tough the law is.
So where have the Tumblers performed?
We travel all over the world. Zagreb, Croatia, Belize, Israel, China, Tokyo, Japan, Hong Kong, Honolulu, Hawaii, Honokai, Hawaii, Cayman Islands, Bermuda, you name it, we've been there. The Big Ten, the NBA, the NFL, colleges and universities, elementary schools, bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, let's go. And we were in Israel, and we performed there. And I indicated when they gave me the microphone that who I was, and that I had served in the military. And then these 10,000 soldiers stood up and gave me a standing ovation. I loved Israel, but there's only one thing that I didn't like about Israel. One thing. When it came time for me to eat breakfast, no bacon, eggs, or ham. That's the only thing I didn't like about it, but it was beautiful country, great people, lox and bagel, gefilte fish, crepe lock, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, well,
I'm looking forward to going back too. They're working on it now as we speak.
Yeah, well, the Tumblers, it's a phenomena, right?
The other thing too, and that is, I forgot to tell you this, that when you go to see the Bulls play, the kids who do the slam dunk, those are Jesse White Tumblers team.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, whenever I've seen the Tumblers, it's probably a dozen times in my life. It's always a spectacle, right? It's always high energy, and just amazed at what these young people can do. It's like they're just flying through the air. Yeah. And I can only imagine the amount of confidence that it gives these young people, right? Coming from these very modest backgrounds that most of them have, and they're doing something, not only as an individual, but they're doing something as a team. So they're learning a lot of life lessons.
Sure, and what's good about it, they get a chance to meet people of diverse ethnic backgrounds. Like I said before, you learn to eat someone else's food, you learn to understand about the culture, it makes for a good relationship. Well, that's the experience I want them to have. And then, of course, we turn down hundreds of requests every year because you cannot put them into our schedule. We do about 35 parades on the 4th of July.
Oh, wow.
And matter of fact, we were in the Highland Park parade when they had the shooting, and it was called off before our unit got a chance to march. And so these kids see the world, make sure that the ones who want to go off to college will help in that process. We have a trunk party every year.
Mm-hmm. Rotary One.
We have, that's right, we have about 800, this year we give out 800 trunks, thanks to Rotary One and others. We do the scholarship program too. We have about 20 kids every year that we send off to college. We reach from between $3,000 to $6,000 toward education. You can be a good athlete once you be a good student and a good human being.
So you've had thousands of individuals over the years participate in the Jesse White Tumbler program. I'm wondering if there's an anecdotal story or two an individual young man or woman that comes to mind that you're particularly proud of?
Richard Blackman, he's a gentleman who was one of my tumblers when I was teaching at the Asheville Elementary School I graduated from. He went on to Lincoln Park High School and then from there to Southern Illinois University, and from Southern Illinois University to Notre Dame School of Law, and became a practicing attorney. And he practiced law for a number of years, and he realized that was not his calling. So right now he's working on juvenile delinquency prevention program.
Any women?
Oh, we have young ladies who are doctors, lawyers, teachers, pharmacists, massage therapists. I mean, you name it, we cover the gamut.
Yeah, well, like I said in my introductory remarks, one of the things that I'm most impressed with is the impact that you've had on at-risk youth here in the Chicago area, and the impact that they've had not only around the state of Illinois, but around the U.S. and beyond.
Well, let me tell you something else to show you how tired you are. Whenever we go someplace and perform, we are inundated with requests for that brochure, because I want my kid to be in a program such as yours. And at one time, I had 6 locations. I had groups at Waukegan, Springfield, Evansville, Indiana, Maywood, Illinois, St. Joe, Michigan, and Newark, New Jersey, and Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Decatur, Illinois.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping that the program enjoys more replication, like you've been talking about, that it would carry on well beyond, your lifetime.
I hope this program will be around for eternity.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Jesse White Foundation.
It is the umbrella of the Jesse White Tumblers.
So you have a scholarship program, you have a tutoring program, you provide job opportunities for the unemployed.
Truck program.
Right. So I'm coming up to speed on the tumblers. There's a minimum expectation, right? Grades, their academic performance, staying free from drugs and alcohol and gangs. And I'm wondering, how are the tumblers selected? How do they qualify for the higher level performances or the travel that you do?
They have to show that they are proficient enough to be a part of the traveling squad. So they have to work as hard as they can. If they need help, we can help them with that, but they have to be able to be a good performer and be a good human being, good tumbler, good team member, good human being.
Excellent. Well, it gives them something to strive for, something to shoot for,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
And by the way, when we do shows, the kids, some of the shows are pro bono. We donate some of the shows. Meaning, we pick up the foundation, and the Tumblr team will pick up the tab. For example, if you have an organization that cannot afford to pay the fee, and it's a worthy or worthwhile organization, well, then I'll make the decision as to whether we should make it pro bono. The question was asked, pro bono, how much is that? At least zero.
So I don't want to focus on the negative, but you made reference to some of the adversity or obstacles that you've experienced in life, and in sort of a more of a rapid fire fashion. What have been some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered first as a youth when you're thinking about growing up?
As a youth, poverty was number one, and discrimination is another.
Okay. How about as an athlete? What are some of the challenges you encountered as an athlete?
Discrimination. But discrimination, that's about the only thing.
Okay. How about as a teacher? What were some of the challenges you encountered as a teacher?
None. I enjoyed it. When I was a kid, I used to try to figure out ways to avoid going to school. My back, my nose, my throat, my head. No, you gotta go to school. I left the Board of Education with 139 unused sick days. I went to school. I spent more time at school than I did when I was a kid. I probably missed, in years I taught, 33 years. If I missed 10 days, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're very dedicated at something that you're natural at, and it's very rewarding.
If there's a job to do, you do it to the best of your ability. The easiest thing you'll ever get a chance to do in life is say, I quit or I can't. And I don't want that to ever be a part of my philosophy. So when Madigan told me not to waste my time, tell my friends not to waste their time, no money of their efforts or energies on my behalf, I said, watch me. And that's what I tell kids. Watch me.
Yeah, never doubt a man on a mission. That's my way of thinking about it. So back to challenges that you've encountered. How about as a parent?
As a parent, tough law. Tough law. You have to go to school. And as I said, two of them excel beyond description. The other one kind of is domestic worker. But the other two, one graduated from Illinois State and the other graduated from Cornell. And both on scholarship.
About as a not-for-profit leader, what are some of the bigger challenges you've faced?
Well, let me share with you what happened. One day, some of my staff came to me when I was Secretary of State. They said, we want to build a building in your honor. I said, what's that all about? They said, well, you've done so much with kids and you have to use this facility, Moody Bible Institute or Seward Park or Stanton Park. Have you ever thought about having your own facility? I said, well, I never thought about it. I said, but it's a good idea. He said, well, first of all, let's talk with Mayor Daley and let's see if we can get some funding, like tip money. It's about $10 million. I said, okay, fine. So I met with Mayor Daley, indicated that I wanted a piece of property where we could build a facility so that the kids can come become better educated, better informed, become better athletes, better human beings. And he said, that's a great idea. I looked at a place at 150 North Western Avenue where I did my first tumbling show, and it is in need of repair. Tear it down and make the land smooth and build a facility. That would be great. Where I started my first efforts with the Jesse White Tumblers. So he said, let's do that. So then, after they cleared the land and we were ready to start building something, of course, I had raised about $6 million. I found out that he said, I'd like for you to come to my office. So I went over to his office. I said, what can I do for you, Mary Daley? He said, that particular location is a non-starter. I said, what do you mean? He said, the ministers in the churches in that area don't want you over there. I said, don't want me over there. I said, but I don't understand that. He said, well, when you were over there, all of the kids would come to where you were, and there would not be enough kids for them to have at their facility.
Oh, geez.
So I said, okay. So then so they asked me to come back in a couple of weeks. And sure enough, went back to them. He said, I have a location for you. He said, 412 West Chicago. I said, I'll take it. He said, I don't understand this. I was expecting a big argument or a big discussion. Tell me, why would you want a location at 412 West Chicago Avenue? I said, that's one of the sites of Cabrini Green. I know the building that was there. I live about 5 blocks from it. I said, you have Chicago Avenue bus, Larrabee bus, Halsted bus, Brown Line, Red Line. Hey, it's a place where kids can use to get to where the facility would be located. And so he said, fine. So we started building. But yet I had not gotten the $10 million. He left without giving me, Walter Burnett, my alderman, signed off on the $10 million, but he left and didn't sign the document. So one day, Robbie Emanuel is running for mayor. He called me and asked me to have breakfast with him. We sat, we talked, and then I indicated that I have about 60 black churches that I could take him to. He said, if you do that, he says, I'm going to be a winner. I said, well, glad to have you on board. So as we were leaving, he said, is there anything that you want me to do for you? I said, well, Mayor Daley left me with the promise that he was going to give me $10 million of tip money. Alderman Burnett signed off on it, but he didn't sign the document. He said, well, let me become the next mayor, and I'll show you something. About 3 weeks after he became the mayor, we got the $10 million, and this is the building.
Yeah, well, I love that story. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Do you know Ron? Do you know Ron Emanuel? Tangentially. He was somebody who got things done.
Well, 2 thumbs up for Ron Emanuel.
So I'm wondering, under the banner of advice, what advice can you share with parents, especially dads, as relates to fulfilling their commitment?
Be honest with your kids. Be fair. Be tough. Be loving. Be caring. Giving. Let your word be your bond. Never lie to them. Never mislead them. But at the same time, when they violate the spirit of the rules and regulations that you've established, like in the movie with Clint Eastwood, you say, you're a racist man. Tough love.
Yeah, well, I think that's the message I've heard consistently from you is that, you experienced that growing up as a youth. It was a really important trait as an athlete and in the Army. And, you've tried to share those same lessons that you've learned with thousands, tens of thousands of other young people. And, we all need to know what's expected of us,
Sure.
right? And most people try to achieve what's expected of them. Some will excel beyond that. And for those that, aren't motivated, they just need something to shoot for. So I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd like to say before I wrap up.
I've had the great honor of serving people of the state of Illinois with honor and distinction for a period of 24 years as Secretary of State, not to mention the 16 years as State Representative, and not to mention the 6 years as Cook County Court of Deeds. And I just want to thank the people for allowing me to serve and to bring your office into the 21st century and make it kind of an office that they can look to as a semblance of pride. And knowing full well that not only did I take on the job, but I was committed to duty. And that this office is a better place for them to come to get the services that they richly need and deserve in a timely manner and in a highly professional way. And so with that, 2 thumbs up for the great people, the great state of Illinois.
That's fabulous. Jesse, thank you for the time and many insights. As a reminder, Jesse is just one of the advocates of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Jesse, thanks again.
And thank you for listening to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children match up with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support other dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast was produced by me, Tom Couch. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.